Greetings from the majestic foothills of Northern California's Sierra Nevada mountains, and welcome back to the only podcast completely dedicated to bringing childhood back outside. I am your host, Kenny Ballantyne. Today we will be speaking with a courageous explorer from the untamed jungles of Los Angeles. Debi Huang of GoExploreNature.com will share with us how her family finds ways to connect with nature every day, even while living in the concrete jungle. All of that and more in today's episode of Nature Kids Radio.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze. Listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me out forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in.
Nature Kids Radio is a production of the Nature Kids Institute, and if you haven't already, head on over to our brand new website, naturekidsinstitute.com. There you can take a free online course on connecting kids with nature and find videos, blogs, and resources that have all been designed to help you get kids back outside. Our guest today is Debi Huang of the very popular blog GoExploreNature.com. She is a family nature expert from Los Angeles who now has over 350,000 readers around the world. Debi, welcome to Nature Kids Radio. Can you start us off by telling us a little bit more about you and why you do what you do?
My name's Debi, and I live in Los Angeles, and I've actually been here. I'm one of the rare odd birds who's been in LA her entire life. I actually, in terms of a career before having children, I was a writer who had a background in health education. And it wasn't until having children that the concept and the idea of spending time outside became more of a priority. Although when I look back now, I realize that my husband and I spent a lot of time outside, and particularly we enjoyed traveling to wild places. We still, someday when the kids are gone and have moved on, we will get back to our passion, which is traveling to wild places to see wild animals. We spent our honeymoon in Churchill, Manitoba, watching polar bears, which I think is kind of unique. So anyway, so I didn't necessarily see a connection initially when I had the kids, but I certainly can look back and see it now. And how I fell into blogging is perhaps not a unique story, but actually in 2009, when I started my blog, my oldest son was about 4.5, and my youngest was still an infant. And my dad passed away rather unexpectedly. And I'd never lost anyone close to me, and I was completely grief-stricken. I had an infant, I was working full-time, I was totally tapped out and overwhelmed. And was certainly doing things to take care of myself, going to a grief support group and talking to friends and that kind of thing. But I found myself drawn to quiet spaces, specifically quiet spaces outdoors. And my dad had a passion for Yosemite in particular. And so I found myself drawn there and out on the hiking trails and out at parks, and as a place where I could be quiet and deal with the feelings that I had. And I think one of the things that nature provided me during that time, and even today, but more so specifically during that time, was this idea of constancy, continuity, I guess, and strength that at the time was really important. It was kind of nice to be able to look and go, wow, there's Tunnel View, there's El Cap, and there's Half Dome, and they're still there. Amidst this chaos that is my life at the time, with kids that are growing and people that you're losing, I could look at nature and see, oh, it's still there. And I can come back to it when I need something that is strong and provide that strength for me. And then it just sort of flowed naturally. I started writing about the things that my kids and I were doing. And And I originally thought that the blog would be a place where I would write about our adventures in Los Angeles, because I knew at the time people probably don't look at Los Angeles as a place where you can spend time in nature and get outside and make those nature connections. So I thought I would start it as a place to write trip reports, actually. We'll go someplace, I'll write it up, provide people with some tips, that'll be that. And it eventually just grew into more than just those trip reports, but also more general ideas for ways to make connections, of course, at the time with little kids and nature.
Well, it's gone beyond trip reports now, though. So what could you continue us forward then and just say what has the blog become and how do you see it now?
So it started, like I said, it started with those trip reports. And then, our trips, being here in Los Angeles, our trips were not enough, if you will. We weren't going on them frequently enough for me to always have something to write about. So I found myself writing about general things, about ideas for ways people could get outside, at first in specific places, but then even in their own backyard. And what could they do in their backyard that would allow them to make little nature connections, especially living in a big urban location like I do, where we don't have ready access to a forest or a river or things of that nature. And those types of posts that I was writing became really popular, and I started meeting a lot of people online who were supporting the idea of writing in general about nature and ways that kids can connect with nature. And so the blog became really about that, about how families could connect with nature. And even within that realm, for me, it became, how can you connect with nature right at home? Because I felt like that was my unique niche. Again, living in an urban jungle, how can I, if I only have 15 minutes or half an hour, how can I help my child to connect right in our own backyard or front yard or at the park or whatever resources might be available to you? And so that's sort of the life that the blog took on. And I now, sadly, actually, only a very small percentage of my readers come from Los Angeles. So I guess it kind of took on a life of its own.
If an urban family is getting out, say maybe to the national park or a camping trip or something like that on an annual basis, they might think they've got nature covered and they can check that off the list. Why is the everyday, the 15 minutes, the backyard, why is that important to you? Why do you think it's important to the well-being of children?
There's this feeling I get, and I'm sure you get it too, when you are truly immersed. It's inexplicable. I had a friend ask me the other day, so my husband wants to go to Yosemite, but I just don't get it. Like, what's the big deal? And I kind of just looked at her like, what do you mean? Have you seen pictures? There's this complete feeling when you have that immersion that you can't get anywhere else. And I found myself as a child, I was fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot of time, particularly in Yosemite. But as an adult, when I would take my children there, we'd go on family vacations, and I found myself coming home and still yearning to have that sense, that feeling, that connection, that immersion of peace and quiet and solitude and serenity and all the amazing things that nature offers. And so I started searching for a way to be able to provide that on a smaller scale. And now being able to look back on that and realizing that we do all need that in our day-to-day lives. And children especially need that, especially in our tech-driven, activity-driven society that we're living in now. It's that sense of constancy and wonder that is right outside our door. And now that my children are a little older and I can sort of begin to see the benefits of having had that experience, that you can take it everywhere. You can be in a parking lot, and my youngest, who is now 6 and obsessed with all animals, but we'll be in a parking lot of a Target and he'll stop because he sees a butterfly fly by. And he stops, and in that moment, he's completely connected. He's oh, what kind of butterfly was it? I don't know. Is it going to stop? Can I catch it? All these things that he can have that experience without having to be somewhere far away or having to think that nature is only a place we go to far away. It's not. It's right here. We just have to realize it. So that's why I think it's important that kids have that opportunity, and it doesn't need to be anything more than 15 minutes or a half an hour. I think it's the way that we think and the way that we help our children to think about the world that we live in. I know my 6-year-old, he's constantly telling me, Mommy, we're animals, and understanding that he's part of the whole chain and the whole connection, so that no matter where we are, they can understand that. We don't have to be in a special place. We don't have to be in a national park or a state park to have those experiences, which I think is an invaluable thing for kids to be able to take as they move forward wherever they might go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you find that your readers are looking for when they find you?
I think they want, it's interesting. When I look at my most popular posts, they continue to be things like lists or scavenger hunts. I think they're looking for a quick activity that they can do, and hopefully right outside their door. With younger kids, the backyard nature posts, the seasonal nature ideas are also very popular. So I get the sense that there's an interest there, but it's also interesting to hear you say, that people are looking for ideas of what they can do right in their own yard. Because sometimes I wonder, are people really looking, or are they just kind of at home struggling with how to make that connection? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure I always feel it as the writer, the author. All I can do is kind of look at my statistics and say, well, this is what I know is most popular. And I would hope that they come to me pretty much thinking that I'm the one that can offer the activities, and they can search through and find something that might be appropriate for them at any given time of the year.
Good. So this next question is a conversation that I have in virtually every interview I do, but everyone brings a different insight to it. And so I was wondering if you could tell the story of how you think we got here. How do you think we've gone in very few generations from a childhood that was immersed in nature and largely outdoors to a childhood that is largely immersed in technology and indoors?
Yeah. Interesting, because I find myself having this conversation with a lot of people too. And you're right, everybody's has something different to add. So I can go with mine personally. My personal take would be, when I think back on my parents, they were younger than I was when I got married by 10 or 15 years. They very much were able to kind of look at what their parents had done in parenting them and thought, okay, that worked. Awesome. We'll do the same thing, which meant things like hands off with your kids. We had a very simple childhood when I look back on it. We were not involved in multiple activities. I think I played one sport, and it was only offered in the spring, and the rest of the year, there was nothing. I mean, literally, there was nothing. There was nothing to do. There was nothing that my friends were doing. There wasn't anything I was missing out on. There was no stress or encouragement for parents to be making sure that their kids were the smartest, the fastest, the this, the that. There was none of that. Or if there was, it didn't filter down to us as children, for sure. So it was natural, and what everyone else was doing, to almost have a separation, I think, between parents and children. There was a line, I'll talk a lot about this with my friends. We had this sort of unwritten rule that, if the parents got together, you as children just knew you were not, you left the room, you took off, you were not supposed to be there. That was a conversation the parents were having. And so you would just go do something. At family gatherings, you would, whatever, run off, what have you. And during the summer, especially, you just took off. I mean, I remember being 8 years old, if that. I could have been younger because I had an older brother. Got on my bike, left the house, and I just came home for dinner. And I can remember getting in trouble a couple of times because I didn't come home for dinner. I went to a friend's house and never called home, and mom was mad, like, where are you? But it only took that experience once to learn that I needed to do it the next time. But so I think this separation between the parents and the kids, at least that's the big one I feel with my family, because I feel like we're not like that we're very involved in our children's lives because we enjoy it. It's not out of a need that we have to. But so, for example, on the weekends, we want to be with our kids. We actually enjoy that. So it isn't like they wake up on a Saturday morning going, okay, well, I know that I don't have anything to do, so I'll go bike ride over to, Johnny's house. Because we're usually all doing something together. So in that sense, and then I think that the fear that I know that I have, which is completely unjustified, that's the hilarious thing, is that my at a conscious, at an intelligence level, I understand my children are safe, completely safe, safer than they were when I was a kid, and yet I still have trouble letting go, and letting them do all the things that I was allowed to do as a kid. This summer I've worked very hard on standing back more, on letting them get the bumps and the bruises. And I'm not exactly sure why that's as big a deal, why it was easier. Maybe it was because parents weren't around when you got your bumps and bruises, whereas now we are around. So the fear is that something's going to happen to our kids in terms of allowing our kids to walk places on their own or go on a bike on their own. But again, when I was 8, I've got a 9.5-year-old now. He does nothing compared to what I did at 8 years old. And I feel really bad about that. I mean, I really have to work to make sure that I can raise children who are competent and can make good choices and can take care of themselves, because I can't expect them to suddenly do that at 18, if and when they're going to leave the house. And so it really has to be a conscious choice. And for that, I am truly sad, because I wish that they had more freedom. I really do. Because I remember what it meant to me. It's part of your development as a child. And that probably breaks my heart more than anything, is just that sense of freedom. Not only that they don't have it, but also that I have such a problem allowing them to have it. It's a little easier with my younger, just because I think I see, you got to start early. And it seems that when we were children, we just did those things. We played with knives, we made fire at younger ages than we do nowadays. And I don't know if it's social norms. You don't see that? Because sometimes I think, well, if I hung out with different people, I bet it might be different. If I were surrounded in a different environment, it might be different. If I lived in the forest, it would be different. If I lived in Yosemite, it would be different. But yeah, so that's sort of my take. I think that the fact that I want to be with my children, in a way, has kind of diminished their capacity to be as free, maybe, as we were as kids.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Have you heard that at all?
No, that is all original.
Does it make sense, though, when you
It
think about
completely
it?
makes sense. You're making
Right?
me think now. I'm like, oh
I mean,
yeah.
I thought about it, and I'm like, when I was a kid, my parents, there was this very unspoken thing, and I don't even know how you knew it, but you knew it by the time you were 5 or 6, that, like, even if you were going to go out to dinner, my husband was just saying this the other day, he was like, gosh, if I went out to dinner with my folks, I always brought a book. I mean, I knew that they were going to talk, and I was going to sit there with my book, and that was, and if there were other kids there, fine, but usually they all had their books too. Whereas in today's day and age, you'd see kids with iPads or iPhones or whatever, or those kids would be the flip side, which is what we try to do, actively engaging them in that conversation. So, I feel like I'm doing the right thing in that sense, but it's had this weird effect, I think, of, well, the last thing I want to do on a Saturday is just send them on their way, because I want to spend time with them. So I think, when you have 2 parents outside the home, too, as old-fashioned as that sounds, that you come home on the weekends and, parents really want to be with their kids. They haven't been with their kids all week. And so, how they do that is by having either structured activities, or maybe if they're nature fans, they'll go off and spend time in nature, but certainly all together. You have less time where you're just investigating on your own.
When it comes to kids having that unstructured free time, I'm finding very often that very kind of fear that you describe is a main stumbling block. I see it everywhere. However, not everyone agrees with you that it is an unjustified fear. I
Oh,
believe it. I believe it's an
oh,
unjustified
totally
fear.
unjustified. You
But
read the statistics and
sure,
like,
sure.
oh my gosh, I need to get over myself.
No, that's right. That's right. But not everyone can go there. Not
Yeah.
everyone can go there, especially people in some of the cities where I've been doing work. And but I think that you are in a unique position as someone who can give very good, easy, practical things that people can do with their kids that still allow them some of that creative expression and independence and free time outside while respecting that fear. And I was wondering maybe what if there's some suggestions you could make to listeners who maybe think, I'm not going to let my kids go right across town, so what can I do?
Well, boy, that is a tough one because up until, only recently, and I feel very late in the game, but up until very recently, everything was really parent led. If we went places, if we did things in our neighborhood, it would be, with mom or dad or with all of us. So if we went on a nature walk, which for us is just around our, very urban neighborhood, but paying attention to nature, it was always with us. And it still is. I think that what evolves as they get a little bit older is you start to be able to make them, allow that zone that was parent filled before to sort of be a little bit bigger now that they are old enough and that they can respect and be safe in. So, we've got two kids that live next door, two boys that live next door that are the same age as my kids. And so, they'll go, oh, they love to ride these bikes. They've got these little bikes that spin and have sparks or whatever. I forget what they're called. These little like big wheels, basically. They're like our big wheels from when we were a kid. And they'll go up and down the block and they've got all kinds of games and what have you that they play. And that's sort of the start of something that we had as kids. In allowing them freedom. I have my school that my kids go to is 3 blocks away, and my oldest kid has been begging to walk to school since he was in, I don't know, first grade, alone or with a friend, and I refused. I was like, this isn't, and yet I'm saying to myself, this is insane. Like, how can I not let him do this? He's asking for it. He's completely responsible, and so it became compromises. I found someone that he could walk home with a few days a week, and now he's got that freedom. And once you start sort of allowing your children to have that freedom and they can show you responsibility, then you feel a little bit more comfortable giving more and more. And it may start out, I think the toughest thing for me when they were little was not controlling what they were doing, not controlling their play, was just presenting opportunities in nature, whether we were at the park or even when we were out walking in a neighborhood, and then allowing them to sort of run with it. And as they got older, I could back off even more. I could just present them with something like, here's a hose and some dirt, have fun, and they can do that now. And I can shut the back door and give them the entire backyard to play in without my having to be there and feel comfortable with that. But it was certainly baby steps all along the way. And I still will ask readers, do you let your kids play outside in the backyard on their own? And I can remember a few years ago thinking, oh my gosh, I could never do that, And again, we did that as kids all the time. And our backyards now are smaller and far less dangerous. But now I have no problem with that now that the kids are older and know what's going on. And I figure, and whatever's going to happen is totally doable. It's totally manageable. I mean, I've had to deal with, with my youngest having his head split open with a rock at the river in Yosemite. We got through that, right? So it's kind of like, hey, you're going to get stung, you're going to get hit, you're going to get cut. We can deal with that, and you'll learn a lesson. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing the whole parent thing with kids going to school, and there's jobs, and there's a busy life, right? And most people who are juggling that busy life can be a little overwhelmed by the idea of trying to squeeze outdoor play and outdoor experience into a child's life every day. You have kids that come home and go outside and play, which is becoming a rarer and rarer thing in this world. And so I was wondering if you could speak to that. Why is that important to you, that they come home and play outside as opposed to getting on the gaming system? And how can a parent make that appealing to their children? You know.
It's been an interesting ride. I have two boys. The oldest is very intrinsically motivated by nature. So you could tell him something. You could offer him, hey, what would happen if? And that was always enough, Hey, go outside and see this, that, or the other thing. Then I had a youngest child who has recently entered school. We just finished kindergarten. And I've learned is completely different, is very, almost has a need, if there is such a thing, but has a need to be physically active and engaged every day. And so I went from sort of a loosey-goosey structure at home to being a lot more structured about how we spent our time. So the expectations for him in particular were clear, and he knew during his day he was going to have time to do these different things, whether it was, having a time to read at night or taking a shower or what have you. But on that schedule now is outdoor time. And he always tells me it's like his most favorite part of the day. And so I had never thought of that even before him. I would say in the last year, I had never really realized it needs to be part of your day as much as that, your nightly routine. So it's part of our nightly routine, which, I think for most people is maybe they have, shower or bath, they have dinner time. Hopefully they have some other activity in there like reading or quiet time with your child. But by pushing it back to having either, depending on the season and how how much sun you have out, either it was right before dinner time or right after dinner time. And not only has it made a huge impact on him because he knows he gets that every day, but you start to see, well, yeah, and then it's ingrained in your life. It's something that you do every day the same way that you're taking a shower or bath, which I think is where it needs to go. And, but to be honest, you have to schedule that in. You have to make it a priority. You have to see that there's value in it. And I think, again, now being able to look at my two children differently, I can see where my youngest son greatly benefits from that. I mean, if we go a day for any reason, whether we're traveling or we're just, for whatever reason, we don't have that explicit 1 hour. For him, it's at least an hour outside every day. He's just almost a different person the next day. And he'll tell me, Mommy, I got to get outside. I got all this energy and, wants to be playing and out there. And yet for my oldest, he doesn't have that same need. And yet I know, in my own mind, that it's just as important for him, even though it might not show. So that's why we as parents really have that responsibility to bring that to the kids, even though they may not be showing it. I guess that's what I've learned, having one kid who shows it, one kid who doesn't. And as they're young, it's easy enough to sort of present these simple play ideas. If a child has a favorite toy, take it outside. Allowing them to get dirty, which I know bugs people a lot, but you put systems in place to make it easier. If you're worried about them getting dirty, do it right before you normally have bath time or shower time so that there's an automatic, you don't need to worry about that. And as they get older, you tailor their interests around things that they can do outside. Technology, and I'm sure you deal with this a lot, but technology, I think, gets a bad rap in its relationship to the outdoors. That some people may believe it's all or nothing, that, we have this technology, and either you have technology or you're outside. And I think we need to find a balance. We need to find a way to take the interest in technology and see if we can't bring it outside, and see if there isn't a way for a child who is, maybe got their head in games all the way, to slowly be edging them out the door with, for example, my oldest loves taking videos. He loves creating, making videos. Like he'll make Lego stories, right? All shot on stop motion using his iPad. Well, now he's got one of these macro lenses on his iPad. So he's fascinated by taking these pictures and then putting them together in the same kind of thing. So it's taking his passion that he might have inside and finding a use for it outside to make a nature connection. And then slowly, of course, once you're outside, then the rest sort of comes naturally. You wind up putting the iPad down and walking away, and the kids don't even realize it. But I think initially for a parent who feels like, well, my child only wants to play video games, or that's their downtime. They're really relaxing that way. Well, okay, slowly but surely you can find a way to take that outside, so you don't have to have you don't have to make it a combative thing with your child. And I know some people have rules about, what do they say, like screen time for green time. So they'll say, okay, well, if you want to have, 30 minutes on your computer or your iPad, then let's go spend 30 minutes outdoors first. So there are certainly different ways that you can set up depending on what your household values or how your household treats screen time. But maybe not thinking of it as all or nothing is certainly a way to say that it's okay. It's okay to take the lifestyle that you and your family might have and still fit in nature. I read this post. I don't know if you've met Linda McGurk, I think is her name. She writes, I can't believe I can't remember the name of her blog, but I want to say she's in Canada as well. Anyway, she wrote this post about how her grandparents helped her develop her passion for nature. And the whole thing about her post that just so spoke to me, she said, my grandparents were not active people. They didn't play sports. They didn't hike. They didn't go cross-country skiing. Heck, they were fat and they ate bad food. But they believed in spending time outside. They walked after dinner. They had picnics. Whenever we went on road trips, we would stop and picnic. They valued being outside. And she said, and that was enough for me as a child to get. And I think sometimes, there may be a thought that as a parent, you don't fit the mold, that you don't, you aren't that weekend warrior, or you aren't that knowledgeable about nature, or maybe you rather watch sports or what have you on a Sunday. But to still see that you can, that even just spending that time outside, that limited time, even if it's not in a national park or on the, at a ski resort or what have you, can still have an impact. That spoke to me and helped me to realize that, okay, whatever your family might look like can still work to teach your kids that spending outside time is valuable, and instill that passion. And of course, you never know what your kids are going to like. You might be somebody who is, my youngest is now running. He loves running, and I'm like, wow, Dad and I don't run at all, but that's awesome. So you just, we're all individual people, so it doesn't necessarily take that. You don't have to be what you might be thinking of as this granola, total outdoorsy, in order to instill that love of nature with your kids, to even just get them outside.
Right. So for this next question, then, again, it's one of those conversations that I have with everybody, and everyone sort of brings something different to the table. So in your opinion and in your thoughts, why does this matter? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right, obviously, why kids need to be outside and connecting to nature, but I'm sure there's a few that resonate stronger with you.
Whew, the $1 million question, why does it matter? I can remember talking to you about this again way back in the day, and I think it has to matter. I mean, our planet and the animals that we love and the nature that we love won't continue to be here forever if our kids don't find it as important as we do. And the only way they're going to do that is if they get to know it, is if they get to touch it and feel it and experience it and do all the things that kids do out there. I really believe that. Again, there was another post, and you may have seen it floating around, about this idea of leave no trace, and how, let's back up a little bit on leave no trace when it comes to our kids. And I again really felt strongly about that, because I feel like our kids have to kill a couple lizards while they're trying to grab them, or pull off a couple tails, or not even accidentally step on ants because they think they're awful. We all had those experiences, and our kids need to have those experiences if they're going to have any sense of connection of any sense of caring about this planet that we live on, even if it's not, even if they don't become the next, environmentalists or inventors, or even if they're not involved in the movement, they need to have that knowledge, that understanding that they connect to this world around them, and so do the living things that are here, and that it all matters. I think I'm lucky in the sense that my kids are, or maybe it came because of myself, I don't know, but they really get this idea that we live on a planet, and that planet has other planets around it, and that we're animals and all connected, and therefore we have to take care of each other in order for everything to be going along at a nice, peaceful pace, if you will. And so I think that if we don't teach our kids that, then they're certainly not going to have any interest in spending time outside when they're older, or traveling to places, or going to national parks, and then won't understand the issues that are going to become even more vital in the next generation, whether it's global warming or the plight of animals all across the world that are becoming endangered or lost completely, extinct. We need them. To me, it's not an option. Not to mention that I think the health benefits. Now, this is not something I ever really talk about on my blog, because I'm like, well, I don't need convincing on that sense. You're already preaching to the choir. But, the numerous health benefits of spending time outside and being active and connected to nature, but even just walking or running, any of those activities that maybe people are going to do as adults, you're going to do them outside, hopefully. And so what's the benefit of that? And teaching our kids that they can do that, and encouraging it. So again, that's something that they'll do in the future. I just feel like it's not an option, especially since kids are so, it's so a part of everything you do. And maybe people don't necessarily see that. But for example, you could be in a parking lot of a store, or on a boardwalk by the beach, and a group of pigeons will gather. And, I can ask you, what are your kids going to do? They're going to see that group of pigeons gather. And I know what my boys are going to do. They're going to run right over there and try and chase off the pigeons. That's like, oh, that's super exciting, right? Oh, maybe I'll catch a pigeon. I don't know. I guess we're pre-wired to have this mentality. But those opportunities, or those times, are opportunities to be talking about nature and our connection to nature. Geez, what are the pigeons feeling or thinking while you're chasing them? Or why do we not chase them? Why would we chase them? Or we're out on a trail, or even walking around in our neighborhood, and one of my kids wants to peel off the bark on a tree. Now, I may get that they want to touch it, and I understand that, but I make sure there's a conversation in there about, well, what exactly is this bark to this tree? Is it just bark that was made for you to come and touch it? And so we'll have a conversation. Well, this bark is like the skin of a tree. Would you like it if somebody came and took the skin, off your arm, and that kind of thing. And so those opportunities are there no matter where you live. And I think just a way to be, I guess I can't imagine not having those conversations with my kids, because it would seem like there was this whole world that you just weren't talking about with them. Oh, isn't it cute how they're chasing pigeons? Or, I don't know. So for me, those opportunities are always there, just like they would be for other issues that come up that maybe aren't nature related.
Right. Beautiful. Well, moving back to your blog then, I was wondering if you could give us 2, maybe 3 specific activities that a listener could go home and do right now. Just a couple of your favorites, if you could just describe, here's something that you could do with your kids today that'll have them outside, connected to nature, and having fun.
I would think the first is to go on a nature scavenger hunt. I've got them by seasons and by all kinds of different scavenger hunts, but you don't need to even, you can just write down 5 things you think that your child might be able to find around the neighborhood, anything from a flower to a specific color or kind of bird, what have you. And you take your list outside with you, and you take a walk around the neighborhood, and you see what items you can find. And it's a way to be looking at your neighborhood, especially if you live in an urban area, in a completely different way, taking notice of things that you might not otherwise have noticed were there, or seeing that nature's right there and you didn't realize it. So that's a simple way that you can do, and it's different every time you do it, whether you do it during the day, at night, this season, that season. So it's sort of an endless opportunity, if you will. Another one that was a big hit when my kids were smaller that you can do in just about any yard is bug hunting. And this is a big hit with at least with the boys. And again, it'll depend where you are, sort of the variety of things you might be able to find. But here, it can be as simple as just looking under rocks, or anywhere where it might be moist or damp. Or if you've got a potted plant, you lift it up, and you're guaranteed to find some kind of critter under there. That's a lot of excitement with that one. Another thing I would say is head outside for the older kids. Head outside with a camera and see what you can find with a camera, looking through a lens and photographing things up close. Sometimes you don't notice that the you go to take a picture of a flower and you discover there's something inside. Well, what's the something inside doing? Why is it there? Is it alive? Is it dead? And then it can even be as simple as a pile of dirt and some water. Water is probably one of the simplest things people have access to, certainly at least during the summer, but even in other times of the year. Mix water with something. Mix it with sand, mix it with dirt. If you've got a little bit of dirt, you can bring it in. You can buy it at a home goods store. You can buy sand and fill it up in a bin or a plastic container, and boom, you've got like a little sandbox or a little dirt pile for your kids. You add a couple toys like a shovel or not, and they just use their hands, or they bring in toys, and it's almost instant. Very little money. You've got that in your home, even if you have a small yard. It's really a way for kids to at least start seeing the natural world that's right outside their door.
If all your dreams came true and you could look forward 20 years from now, what would you hope to have seen in the way that children are raised and play on our planet?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll let out my big secret here, although my readers probably know it. I really hate parks, like traditional playground parks. They bring out the worst in me. So I'd love to see them just totally gone and replaced, of course, by natural playgrounds or spaces that have natural elements, whether it's creeks or rock beds or trees that you can climb on and play on. And families out there. I mean, there's so many times I'll even go. I was at a state park, was it last Monday? And the place was empty. So I'd like to see more people out there. And in my perfect world in 20 years, the norm would not be that kids would be involved in any activities after school at all. Zero. If I had my druthers, there would be none. And there would not be any pressure. I don't know if this is unique to me being in Los Angeles, but I definitely feel like there is an expectation that if you want what is best for your child, you will be getting them involved in X, Y, and Z activity as early as possible. And I would love to see that completely gone, where we were just supporting kids by saying, you know what, you go to school and that's enough. When you get home, you don't have to do anything. Oh, and guess what? There's no homework. You don't get homework until you're like in 5th or 6th grade or whatever, so that they have the time to do that. And I'd like to see communities that were more connected. In my neighborhood, a little bit, we're working on it, but I'd like to see more communities where you know your neighbors and your children can interact with their children. And so that, there's more. So I guess that the things that are good about maybe the parenting that we've done and how we're connected to our kids has a benefit. It's not that we're going backwards necessarily to where we were when we were kids, but that we found a way to bring it full circle and allow our kids to have more range, because we do know our neighbors more and our communities are greener and we've stopped stressing about that they play an instrument and a sport before they're in, 3rd grade. That's a really big deal to me, because I feel like it's just robbing kids of time. I mean, my 2 kids, I realize we have these wonderful, unique after-school programs that are provided right at school. And so they're non-academic, and I've loved them. And I think, wow, they're great. My kids like them. They participated in them. We got to last spring, Kenny, and they were totally burnt. They were like exhausted every day. They were angry. They were like, Mom, we don't get to play enough. And I said, we're done. We are done. As long as we are doing something to keep us physically active, that is my first priority for your own health and well-being. And 99% of the time, like, when would that not take you outside anyway? But that's going to be our priority. And I'm guessing that we're going to notice a huge change. So that's what our summer's been like. And that's what we'll, that's how I'm looking ahead. And, I'm sorry it took this long to figure it out. But, for me, it's easy sometimes to get caught up in that mentality. So my perfect world in 20 years we would have figured out that that's not helping our kids at all. It's just hurting them. And then that there might be systems in place to let us be a little more allowing with them, a little bit more able to let them go and let them roam and be the kids that we were. And I think that may come with a sense of community. If I'm with a friend who allows her children more freedom and we go out somewhere, the chances are good that I'm going to give my kids a little bit more freedom when I'm with her and her family, versus now where I may be the one, allowing my kids more freedom, and I'm with a family where the 2 kids each have an iPod on them outside at the park, so I'd like to see that shift too. It's nice to be able to dream.
Yeah, isn't it?
It is. I've never done that. I've never thought of what would I like to see. And
really? Wow.
It
sounded like you've thought about it a lot.
Maybe I've never put words.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, as the great Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can achieve it.
Yes.
So I love that exercise. Very cool. Well, this has been an absolute privilege.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Anytime. Okay. Well, we'll be in touch.
All right. Take care, Kenny.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's our program for today. Next week, we will be joined by the adventurous Cindy Ross. Cindy is an acclaimed long-distance hiker, author, and a dear friend. And boy, does she have some stories to tell. Like the time she took her family for a 3,000-mile hike across the Continental Divide. Trust me, you will want to tune in for this one. Until then, I'm Kenny Ballantyne saying thanks for listening, and I will see you outside.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in. Let me be by myself in the evening breeze. Listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me out forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in. Just turn me loose, let me straddle my